Hey, welcome back to Outside with Sarge. Enjoying a beautiful spring morning. And I'm going to jump on here really quick and kind of address some feedback I received on my last video regarding de-escalation techniques. So the birds are chirping, the white oak trees are purring in the breeze, the morning PT is done, and I just want to sit down with you guys and kind of fill you in with what is on my mind regarding the question I received and what I told this person, because I think it might benefit you as well. Now, although the person that asked me this question about mirroring wasn't in law enforcement, I think the answer can probably also help those who are in law enforcement. Certainly, I know when someone explained it to me years and years ago, it really helped me out as far as thinking in context for my responses to people. So let's get into this. Yeah, so if you watched my last video, it was on de-escalation techniques. And I talked about 3 techniques. The second, which was on having a script. It's very important for us to have a script so we're not just going in there dry or not armed verbally with how to react to what we are seeing. And this person, again, who's not affiliated with law enforcement, asked me what mirroring was. I made a comment in describing having a script about mirroring a person's energy, and if you are inappropriate about your mirroring, it can turn into a verbal circus, is what I remember saying. So here's what I told them. So they just asked, what is mirroring? And it kind of is what it sounds like. Imagine looking into a mirror, and whatever, I guess, the mirror does or whatever you do, it's just going around in circle. In other words, the mirror isn't going to do anything that you're not doing, and you're not going to do anything that the mirror is not doing. In the context of law enforcement, or really, I guess, life in general, there are times when mirroring is very appropriate, like when you're learning how to speak or learning how to walk, learning how to cook. Mirroring can be very effective because essentially you're copying what another person is doing. And so, yes, mirroring is not inherently a bad thing. But in the context of law enforcement, it could be, I won't say good or bad, I will say advantageous or disadvantageous. Advantageous meaning that if you, let's say you find a lost child, or you get a call to a lost child and you locate that child, and they are presenting as sad or fearful, they're talking in a low, hushed voice, you can mirror some of that so that you are essentially talking on their level. A great technique for that is so if it's in the context of a lost child, I would always just kneel down to get as close to their level, so I would mirror their height so that they weren't just looking up at this person that was much bigger and taller than them in uniform. So yes, mirroring can be very effective. When you're interviewing a witness and they, again, are low tone, maybe not the greatest vocabulary, maybe they have a little bit of fear, you can mirror the level of their conversation. In other words, you're not talking really loud or using big words or harsh language to ask them questions. In other words, you'll get a better response from them if you mirror some of their attributes. In other words, if they think that you represent who they are or you understand them. And one great way to get across to another human being that you understand them is to mirror them. So, good context. That would be some examples of when mirroring could be very, very beneficial to you. However, when it's puts you at a disadvantage, mirroring can, it can be your greatest enemy sometimes. So let's talk about mirroring and how to best use that in the context of having a script ready so that ultimately you will be a better law enforcement agent, and also better at de-escalating. Now, when we respond to calls, I think it's fair enough to say that the person either calling us or requesting us, or even the person that is the reason for the call, in other words, like a perpetrator or somebody of interest, if you're investigating a disturbance or a crime or whatever, any of those people that we get involved with on the job, we don't necessarily want them setting the tone, the atmosphere, the pace, the volume. Remember, we are the professionals in these incidents, and it's important that we assume that role. And having a script can really, really kind of set you free to focus on other things, such as appropriate mirroring, or to prevent yourself from getting involved in inappropriate mirroring. In other words, if you show up on scene and everybody's yelling, if you start yelling as well, you probably aren't adding to the situation. Now, I'm not saying you show up and you start whispering, because obviously no one's going to hear you. But if you mix appropriate words with your body language, your tone, and your volume, you can have a better chance of kind of breaking that cycle of yelling and giving them something that they're not expecting. Because let's face it, everybody probably that is either used to encountering with law enforcement or has encountered with law enforcement, they're already hyped up. They're already like activated. They are already sad. They are already maybe crying or nervous, or the adrenaline is coursing, or maybe even calling the shots in a lot of cases. And we don't want to show up and mirror that same activity. In other words, we don't want to look like the adrenaline is also calling the shots in us, in that because we think, oh, everybody's yelling, I'll just yell too. Or everybody's crying, I will get emotional, overly emotional, to the point where I'm now ineffective to help the situation. So inappropriate mirroring. And how that correlates with your script is if you have a conceived script, or like an outline for things that you were generally going to say for a variety of circumstances. Now, because you have that, that will free you up to detect other things, such as, am I getting free information from spontaneous statements? Or am I too involved in the emotion of the situation? In other words, am I mirroring the emotions that are presented to me? You can also be freed up to detect things such as like a DUI, or if a person is affected by like a drug or some other thing. You can also be more observant. Does this person have blood on their hands? Are they talking in language where they don't want to get caught? Remember, innocent people don't want to get blamed. Guilty people don't want to get caught. And typically their language and subsequent actions will follow in that vein. In other words, are they acting like they don't want to be blamed, or are they acting more like they don't want to be caught? And that can give you an indicator as to who you're talking to. Am I talking to a true victim here? Am I talking to somebody who is involved, who has information, a witness? Or are they slightly involved? Or are they a catalyst for what occurred? Or is this my suspect I'm talking to? I'll never forget the time early in my career where I was called to a hit and run accident, and I arrived on scene, and man, it was pandemonium. People running around in the streets, people talking in English and in Spanish, so you had that to wrestle with, and people pointing out different people. He knows what happens. He did it. He was driving that car. He's trying to get away. He called me a name. And there's just all this information and stimuli flying around. And man, I got caught up in it big time. I got caught up in it so much that the actual person who hit the other person just walked away. And I didn't even notice he was gone until several minutes later when I actually asked somebody who was on scene, who was uh, also stirred up just like I was, hey, where'd that guy go? And then someone from across the street said he walked away that way. And man, I got caught up in it. I started mirroring that, essentially that nonsense. Now, it's not like I don't want to say that these people were just acting like irrational. For what they had seen, encountered, and felt, they were acting what I might say is normal. But we, as the professionals in the scenario, we shouldn't we shouldn't use that as a crutch. In other words, to say, well, I was just acting like everybody else was. I'm no more to blame than these other people. I mean, you can say that. However, if you want to be effective as a law enforcement agent, you won't get caught up in that because you'll have a script. You'll be freed up to observe some of these details that might bypass you if you are caught up in inappropriate mirroring, and to the true victims in the situation, and also the witnesses who are expecting a professional to show up. You will have done your duty at a higher level so that you can bring justice to the victim, and then also the other people that are in the periphery or maybe slightly involved might say something positive about law enforcement because you created a new example for them by avoiding that inappropriate mirroring. So as I was explaining this to my friend, I could kind of see when that aha moment hit, and it started to make sense. And not only did it make sense, but you could see that they were adopting a new expected reality from law enforcement, which is great because heaven knows if they ever are a victim or need law enforcement, they have every right and expectation to want a professional to show up. A professional who's not going to escalate the situation, a person or a law enforcement professional who's not going to make things worse or muddy the waters even more or let the perpetrator get away like I did in that hit and run scenario. He was eventually caught. No thanks to my part, however, it was my beat partner who ended up catching this person. But yeah, it was embarrassing for me. And not only was it embarrassing for me, but man, I can only imagine what the people around that situation thought of me. Because you can't fault those people for yelling and, talking in Spanish and in English and being excited and pointing and all these things they were doing. You can't blame them for that. But I fully accept the blame for my part in allowing that guy to leave because I just got caught up and I started mirroring big time. So learn from that. Learn from my mistake. Lord knows I learned from my mistake. And it drove home to me the importance to have a script for a variety of situations. So mirroring. I don't want to belabor this thing too long because I think you guys understand where I'm coming from. But let me kind of leave you with this. Imagine, if you will, the future. Predict the future and then prepare for the future. I'm going to look at my notes here because I don't want to forget anything. But what if you encountered on duty or even off duty, really? Because Lord knows, we swore an oath, and that's not beholden to RDOs, regular days off, right? If you saw something when you were off duty, like a lost child or whatever, you would act. I know you would. We all would. But imagine, for purposes of defining and writing a script, what if you came across a lost child? What if you came across somebody or some people who were trapped in a burning vehicle or a burning house? What would you do? What's your script for the end of a pursuit? What's your script for if you try to pull over a vehicle and they actually pull over, but then the doors fly open and then people start running on foot? What's your script for that? What's your script for a victim of a stabbing or some type of violent act? Because let's face it, in all these scenarios, those people that you're dealing with are not acting what I would say like normal. Uh, it's not like you just ran across them in a grocery store while you both are picking out oranges and you struck up a conversation. That's not what this is. Even those people running from the traffic stop. Lord knows you guys probably have lots of experience, as I do, where you have four people running, and once they all get caught, two of them are going to say, I didn't want to run. I kept telling the guy not to run and just to give up. But I guess by proxy or some other bad decision tree, they thought, well, two of them are fleeing. I guess I better follow suit and start mirroring. But when you encounter those people, what is your script going to be when you ask them questions, when you ask them about the car or the nature of the stop, or on and on and on? How about interviewing a suspect, which is much different than interviewing a witness. Now, there are some things that do overlap. Obviously, we want to start small and we want to use language that is not below or above them. We want to engage right near that line of perception, which is another video I'll be coming out with, the line of perception when dealing with people. But these are all these things. Consider these things when you develop your script. That way, when you are presented with dynamic and modular things, as human beings will do to you, you can be freed up to deal with those things in the moment because your script is kind of running in the background already. All right. Also, ask yourself, what would you do? What's your script for being interviewed by news media? For those of you who have done that or will do that or who are authorized to do it, I know it's all very different. But I always knew, or let me back up. I learned sometimes the hard way early in my career that there are people out there who will ask you loaded questions. What? No way. Yes. People will present loaded questions to you in the hopes that you will either divulge something inappropriate, salacious, or some tidbit of information that only they can say they have. They have a job to do as well. I'm talking about news media. So develop a script for that. Are you just going to start talking? Or for the purposes of clarity, transparency, are you going to identify yourself first? Spell your last name so that when they quote you, they don't misspell your name. They don't misrepresent what agency you're working for, kind of setting the groundwork. Also, does your script include hypothesizing about the cause of whatever or contributing factors? Think about these things because they may ask you quite point blank, who did this? And if you say something out of turn or if you say something inappropriate or if you go off script, you can get in trouble for that. You can embarrass yourself. You can embarrass your agency. You can bring discredit upon yourself. So script these things out before they occur. Let's see, what else do I have on this list? Oh, coming across neighbors arguing. Man, that's a big one. Here you're talking about people that generally kind of know each other or know of each other because they live in close proximity. They're neighbors after all. And it can be quite an emotional thing because sometimes they have all this history and this pent up anger or resentment. Same thing for, like people in any type of relationship, worker, coworker, boss, romantic partner, on and on and on. Okay. The point being is please have a script ready. Imagine in your head. I remember my old graveyard partner and I, We worked graveyards for about 5 years together, and we had so many scripts, and we would talk about these things. We would talk about what we would do even if one of us was taken hostage. And that can seem like a far out outlandish thing or possibility, but we talked about it. We didn't want to leave it to chance that that 1 out of 1 million time occurred. In other words, our number was up and either he or I were taken hostage. As silly or as outlandish as that might sound as a possibility, we didn't want to leave it to chance. And during the course of our tenure working together, we would talk about these things. And man, we got to the point where we were firing together on all cylinders. I don't want to say we were reading each other's thoughts, but it was pretty close to that. And we were highly effective in providing safety service and security to the public in our community. Great, great times. But we had like a back catalog of scripts. So let me wrap this up. I probably have gone too long already, but let me know what maybe some scripts are that you have in the comments. I'd love to hear what you're thinking about this, and maybe even on mirroring. I appreciate you viewing and tuning in, and I appreciate you subscribing. We're here to help and make things better, to deal with the challenges, the victories, rewards, and longevity of serving others. So, when you get called upon by the public, they are expecting a professional. Give them what they're expecting, but also get outside of the norm of policing and give them something that they're not expecting. Obviously something positive. Give them something they're not expecting. Give them a higher level of humanity. Give them a higher level of sympathy. Give them a higher level of perceived understanding. Give them a higher level of mirroring when appropriate and a lower or no level of mirroring when it's not appropriate. All right. Let's get outside the historical norms of policing that are outdated. Let's get outside even the baggage that we may bring to the job. Let's get outside of our past mistakes. Let's get outside and let us get that work done.